the first of our conversations of GPFF Lives Online, and we're really glad to have Savanna Washington with us in the film Playing Frisbee in North Korea. Our guests on the who've joined us, I've sent you all links and to the film, I'm just going to again ask you to do a thumbs up about whether you oh, and now I have to stop sharing the screen in order to see you all. Give me a thumbs up that whether you've seen the film, whether you've watched the film. Savanna, you really watched your film.
Over and over and over.
So anyway, let's get started. And I want to start by thanking Savanna for joining us. We did have her film Playing Frisbee in North Korea in the 2018 Global Peace Film Festival, and we were thrilled that Savanna was able to join us in Orlando for that festival. So I want to start by asking Savanna, how did this project come about, and can you give us a little background on it?
Yeah, in 2010, 2009 to 2010, I actually was a Colin Powell graduate fellow during my graduate school. And that spring of 2020, they had Colin Powell and the Colin Powell Center had a Korea reunification conference. And so I didn't know anything about North Korea. I didn't know anything about, even less about South Korea probably at that point. But all the fellows had to go, of course. Colin Powell was going to be there, so we turned out to support him. It was here in New York. And so at the conference, one of the things that I found out was that North Korea had this famine in 1992. 92 about 94, they think anywhere from 1 to 3 million people died. And you think about that in terms of a population of about 25 million people. I mean, that's a huge percentage of their population. But that even in 2010, they still had this chronic malnutrition problem. And so at that point, the World Food Program was trying to get food aid to North Korea. And it was just for lactating mothers and children under 2 and for seniors. And so what the representative that was at the conference, because everybody was there from the State Department, from the UN, anybody that had anything to do with North Korea, they were all there. And so they said, no, there was no country in the world who would give food aid to North Korea. And for this very particular group, right? Again, lactating mothers, children under 2, and seniors. And at that point, I had to ask myself, who are we as a people that we won't feed children? And one of the things the World Food Program is very clear about is that they don't do politics. If someone is in need, they go and they feed the people of that country. And so after the conference, we had a lunch, and I asked, it was Undersecretary General Pasco was there from the UN. And I said, what if there was a little short film, just like, 10 or 15 minute piece about how, about this problem, about the malnutrition problem, the chronic malnutrition problem, and chronic food insecurity problem in North Korea. Would that be helpful? Just about the people of North Korea, not the politics of North Korea. He said that would be very helpful. And so I said, perfect. So this started off as like a 10 to 15 minute short. And this 2010. And then what I realized very quickly was that I couldn't find any footage on North Korea. And so I asked around, nothing. So I did a few interviews. The Powell Center was very supportive. I asked the head of the Powell Center, Vince Boudreau, that day, do you mind if I collect some cards while I'm here? And, so I can talk to people, because I said everybody who had anything to do with the Korea reunification or the Koreas, they were all in the room. And so he said, yeah, and absolutely. And tell them that you have our support. And so that's how it started. And so I did a few interviews, and then it just came to a standstill because Again, I couldn't get any footage, and I was working on another documentary that actually I've gone back to. And about 2000, into 2011, I ran into someone who had been the head of the Asian American Film Festival in San Francisco. And Chu from, he's over at Ford Foundation now. I always get his name wrong. Nina, you know who, Chui?
Oh, Kelly actually knows how to
Yeah,
say
Chiwi.
Yeah, Chiwei, I think it is.
Chiwei, yeah, thank you. So he was doing a panel for Firelight Media, and I said he had been the head of the Asian American Film Festival in San Francisco, and I said, you know, if anybody knows how to get footage out of North Korea, it would be him. And so I went up to him afterwards and I asked him, I said, you know, can you help me? I told him the problem, told him I had to support the Powell Center. And he said, yeah, I think I can. And so this is into 2011. So 2012, he actually, you know, put me in touch with someone who still does work, was doing a lot of work in North Korea, had shot all of this unfettered, unvetted footage. And on the film, in the credit, that person's name is anonymous, because they still do aid work in North Korea, even to this day. And so that's how it started. And then the Powell Center had some money, and they gave me some seed money, and that's how I wound up going to North Korea and South Korea. And then it eventually expanded into a feature length.
And your trip was in 2013, correct?
Yeah, and the trip was I went there in 2013. And so I was in North Korea for about a week. You land in Beijing first, and we took the train down. And then that's where you see the scene of us crossing the bridge into North Korea. And spent about a week in North Korea, and then I spent about a month in South Korea. And I always say, I'm the only person I know who has a North Korean stamp in her passport.
So tell me, what was the most surprising thing you found in North Korea?
Yeah, I think the most surprising thing, it was as we were crossing the bridge to North Korea, one of the things, and we got there, it was like this Twilight Zone moment of walking back into time. So it really was like walking back into time about 50 years, because they still are, I mean, it's things like they still use oxen to plow fields. I mean, that you see this, and I remember the first full day we were there, you know, after we arrived, and I just saw so many oxen. I just started counting them. And in one day, I think I saw over, you know, because they use it for transportation too. They're attached to carts, and they use them for transportation. And so I saw, like in a morning, I saw over 100 oxen. I can't tell you the last time I saw an ox in the United States. And so I think that was the thing that was so surreal. It was just this kind of step back into history, into time. It's like from like 1970s, 1980s, it's like time just has frozen there. So, you know, you see the old Soviet bloc apartment buildings, but then again, you see this old style agriculture, because they can't afford the gasoline, they can't afford the, or they can't even get the parts for the equipment. And that's some of the challenges with some of the embargoes, is that, you know, sometimes they can't even get like machinery parts. So yeah, so they're back to just this kind of very old, you know, this old style way of farming, which is, you know, an ox just pulling a tiller, you know, behind it.
So when you got back from North Korea, there's so much good archival footage that you have in the film. Was it all from that source that you mentioned before, or did you start to uncover more sources of archival footage?
Yeah, I did start to get some more archival footage. The place that was most helpful was National Archives. I went down to DC for a week, and I just lived in their archives. And so a lot of the war footage, all of that just came from the National Archives. And then, you know, a lot of it, I mean, I shot a lot of it. A lot of the things you've seen, and I mean, I shot. But yeah, but I did start able to collect some things. And then I met Christy Gavitt. She had been in the Peace Corps, and then she had gone over, and she was fluent in Korean. And so once they realized that she was fluent in Korean, and they actually wanted her out of the country. because they didn't want her to be able to converse with people, but she's one of these people who is just amazing in languages. And so, but she took she's a photographer, and she took a lot of photographs while she was there, because she was there in the 60s, 70s. And oh no, wait a minute. I'm sorry, I have that wrong. I think she was there in the mid 90s, mid to late 90s, because some of that footage she has was like some of the funeral mounds. That's her. Those are her pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I just want to say to the other people who are listening, if you have any questions for Savanna, go ahead and type them in the chat box on the right. Okay.
Oh, and Nicole, if you need to see the last 15 minutes, then yes, get another link from Nina.
Yeah. I told Nicole to that I'll send her another link. And I do have an email from somebody who's trying to get on here and couldn't, for some reason, the link that wasn't working. So I'm going to send her another link as well. But we do have a question from somebody who hasn't joined us yet, but who emailed a question after watching the film, that is, given that, this is from Francine Dennis, given that the North Korean population is told that America is to blame for their plight, did any act aggressively toward you while on tour, which is a natural tendency of prejudice?
I was there with a group of 10 people. So the thing to know is you actually can take a pleasure tour to North Korea. So I went with a company called Young Pioneer Tours, and you have to go through a sanctioned tour company. So me and another woman, we were the only two Americans on the tour. Everyone else was from all over the world. So the only people, they really wouldn't let us interact with anyone. It was very hard to interact with anyone. That's why that scene of us all playing Frisbee together was so unusual, because they really try and keep us segregated. But we were in the northeast quadrant of the country, and so we were only the second tour that had been allowed in that part of the country. And so they, we're used to seeing, Chinese tourists or Chinese business people come through, but they weren't used to seeing outsiders. And so, so they were just shocked to see, like, we were on a little kind of minivan. They were just shocked to see us, period. So, and they didn't really quite know that me and the other woman were Americans. At one point, they have this one place called Homestay Village, where it's supposed to be this very, very nice little compound of houses.
Let me just stop you for 1 second, because Francine just joined us.
Hi, Francine. So, yeah, we're answering your question. Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know that Savanna's answering your question.
Yeah, so I was saying, it was 10 of us that were on the tour, and so they didn't really know who any of us were, where any of us were from. So it was just shocked. Everyone was just shocked to see just anybody who wasn't Korean or Chinese just around, in the country. Because again, we weren't in Pyongyang, where people are used to seeing tourists, they're used to having people there. Like I said, we were only the second tour that had ever happened in this region of the country. And this region of the country is the second and third largest cities in North Korea. But it's also the place where most of the gulags are, and where a lot of the famine happened. So it was surprising that they let us in. But yeah, so that was interesting. When I was in China, so when we were at the border town of China, there was a lady who asked through our tour guide if she could touch my hair. And I'm like, yeah, of course. She said, can I please? I'm like, yeah. So she just ran her hands all through it. I'm like, oh, that's great. So she was the only one who dared ask.
So you met some people who escaped from concentration camps in North Korea when you were in Seoul, and have such lovely footage of the dancer. What was your how much did that impact on how you made the film?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the other thing that was happening when I was there was the human rights trials were going on, and you saw some of that testimony that was going on, and so that was happening literally like the last week I was in Seoul. I mean, I couldn't have timed that any better, and I didn't know what was happening. It just happened, it was just kismet that happened while I was there. And so I was just there day after day after day, just almost every day I was there just recording. And it's just this powerful testimony of people, you know, choosing life. And again, it's back to, because people have asked me, how did I get involved in this? Being, a little Black lady from Detroit. It's like, how did I, wind up becoming like one of these, become really like a North Korean scholar? At one point, me and my engineer, we used to joke, where, in what world are we North Korean scholars? How did this happen? But, I think it just goes back to all humanity. We're all a part of each other, right? We all belong to each other. There isn't everybody wants the same thing for their families. They want them, they want them to be safe, they want them to be fed, they want them to be healthy, they want everybody to be okay. They want a brighter future for the next generation. And so you just see that. And at one point, when we were at the town next to where the Frisbee playing happened, and so it was a holiday that day, and they're out dancing, and I'm like, oh my God, if I saw my father doing that, I'd be like, oh yeah, Dad, no, please, not in public. So it's just this thing of, you see the same, we're just the same people all over the world. And whether they just happen to be born in North Korea, but we really are just, we're just the same all over the world, and we want the same things. And so I think that was the thing that drove that home more powerfully to me, that we all are just, each other.
Yes. So let me see if anybody has any questions. And actually, use the, where is it? The reactions, and, like raise your hand and I can unmute you so you can ask a question directly. Anybody?
Oh, Kelly asked, what am I working on now? So,
Yes.
so the film I started shooting was, while I was, in that interim period, was a piece called Greening of the Bronx. And I followed these teams in the Bronx. It was Majora Carter's program, Sustainable South Bronx, and they did green job training. And also they fought environmental racism and environmental injustice, because one of the things that happens in the Bronx is that, all of these kind of horrible environmental things are kind of placed in marginalized communities. So all of the waste treatment facilities were there, the prisons were there, the power plants were there, the nuclear power plants were there. So it's amazing what is just concentrated in the Bronx. And so they were in this environmental justice movement, as well as training people.
Carter is an amazing activist.
Right. Majora is amazing. Yeah. So that's what so I'm back to working on that right now.
Okay, that's great.
And there's supposed to be eventually a companion book for playing Frisbee in North Korea. So hopefully, again, this summer, I've done the outline for the book. So hopefully there will be eventually a companion book, because the film will be released this fall in some manner, particularly educational, because I showed it at the Association for Asian Scholars. And so they really want a copy of the film. A lot of the scholars there were saying they would really like to show this to their classes, because it's a really succinct kind of history of North Korea, plus kind of what's happening on the ground there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you're looking for educational distribution for the film now, right?
Right, yeah.
And how's that going?
Well, New Day is kind of the where I'm kind of looking right now. So so we'll see what that looks like. I just haven't had a chance to put my brain to it, because most for people who know me, I'm a college professor, and so about middle of the semester we wound up going online, and so our brains are just fried right now. And they're talking, and I just got an email yesterday saying, yeah, we're probably going to be online in the fall too. So yeah, so it's just this whole thing. We had to kind of have this whiplash moment of us getting all of our classes up online and getting the students resettled again. And it's almost like starting a second semester in the middle of a semester. And so yeah, so I'm literally, and then now we're in final exams, so I haven't had a chance to work on that. So so Monday and Tuesday are my last 2 days of teaching. So once that's over, I'll get a chance to concentrate back on distribution again.
So let's check in with other people. If anybody has a question, raise your hand. Okay, Bill, I see you have a question. So I'm going to unmute you. Whoops, wait a minute. Where did Bill go? I'm unmuting you, Bill, and if you want to ask a question, hopefully this will work.
All right, it worked. Thank you. Hi, Nina. First, I want to say hi to Nina because I think I met you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Is my mic working? Okay, fine.
You're
Nina, I think I
working.
met you. It must be delayed. I'm getting a delayed signal.
Yeah, I think there's a delay.
Okay, so I'll just keep talking then. Nina. I don't have a video right now. Sorry.
Okay. Don't know.
I met you maybe a few years ago at the Toronto Film Festival, and you gave me your card for your Global Peace.
I think it was Tribeca.
Oh, was it Tribeca? Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, I write for People's World and Hollywood Progressive. They're socialist left-wing papers.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm interested in the political aspect of the film. I only got to what? Whose mic is on?
Let me see. Oh, Francine, let me mute. There we go. I think that should do the trick.
I think Jonathan's mic is on.
Whose mic is on?
Jonathan. Okay, well, the sound went away, whatever it was in the background. All right, thanks. Thank you. So I only got to watch half of the film yesterday.
I'll send you another link so you can watch the second half because the links only last for 24 hours.
Oh, okay. Well, there was another series of films on YouTube, actually. It was called Surfing in North Korea. I don't know if you're aware of that series.
No, that's great. I have to look it up.
Yeah, well, it's actually very stunning. It's done by, it must have been done by mostly GoPro cameras. It's action film, and it's beautiful. And, you know, I have to say that I was disappointed in the approach of this movie because when I look for North Korean films, I'm looking at ways to bring us together and try to understand each other and help the North Korean people.
That's why you need to see the second half. It's really important to see the second half.
Oh, okay.
The first half is very historical, and it was just kind of this historical context. And when you see the second half, it's important to see the second half.
Okay, good. Then I'll have to control my
That
comment.
was important to me too, because I feel like part of my job as a filmmaker is to help us introduce ourselves to each other. And so it was really important for me that this wasn't like a hit piece on the North Korean people, that it really was to show their humanity and to show their lives. And some of that life is tough. But if you see the second half, you'll see it's really lovely. There really is just some lovely moments in the second half of the film.
Well, the way I sort of evaluate the film would be if it could be shown in North Korea to other people there. And from what I saw in the first half, I don't think it would ever be shown there because.
Oh no, it would never be shown there. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, this surfing in the one that I saw on YouTube, surfing in North Korea, is a kind of film where you got to know the people close, befriended them on both sides of the political issue, and they were invited back, these people, and the movie was shown in the country. And to me, that's a powerful thing when you can combine with enemies, so-called enemies. They're not my enemies at all. They're our government's enemies. And I think that I'm curious I'm going to ask you a question. I'm just curious if you think this was a political film, or why did you make this film?
Okay, so you missed the first part of it. So the the film started off as a way to help get food aid into North Korea from World Food Program through World Food Program, because there was no country in the world who would give food aid to North Korea, and they all were just trying to get food aid for lactating mothers, children 2 and under, and for seniors. And so it was starting just to show the humanity of the North Korean people, apart from the politics, to be able to to get aid into the country. So yeah, so like I said, as I said earlier, I think that we all belong to each other. We're not different from each other, right? We're not, there are no boogeyman people, right? We're all the same. So yeah, so when you see the second half of the film, the first half of the film, because I knew this was educational, because there would be an educational component to the film. And the one part I wanted to show was how how bad the war affected the country. And the thing to know is, like in South Korea, for them, they've moved on past the war. I mean, for them, North Korea is kind of this cousin that this cousin that just kind of won't go away. And in North Korea, no, they're still on war footing. The war has not ended for them. And it's a really stark difference in how the countries have moved forward or not moved forward. So yeah, so see the second half, you'll see. But there's just some films, like when you look at North Korea, when we tell the history of the film, North Korea has a completely different history. They teach a different history than what happened. So you can't have a different history. And so a film like mine would never show there, because they don't teach the history that happened.
What?
Yeah, no, they teach that South Korea invaded North Korea, and that North Korea repelled South Korea, and that's why Kim Il-sung is such a god. So they have a whole different history.
Did you get to the museum, the War Museum in North Korea, in Seoul?
No, I saw the War Museum in South Korea. Yeah.
No, in North Korea.
No, not in North Korea. No.
Well, that's their side of the story. It would be nice to see their side of the story. And
it is. It's in the film.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. I'll look at the second half. You saw all the captured weapons and all that from the invaders and all that?
I didn't see it. I only saw the War Museum. And remember, in North Korea, it's a very structured tour. They only show you that you probably think it's in Pyongyang, that the War Museum is in Pyongyang.
Yeah.
We didn't go to Pyongyang. We were in the northeast quadrant of the country, where the second and third largest cities are, not Pyongyang.
All right. Well, all right. Well, what school do you teach at in Detroit? I live in Detroit.
No, I live in New York.
Oh, you're in New York. Oh, okay.
We're both New Yorkers.
Oh, okay.
Even though the festival's in Florida.
Well, thanks for sending me the link, Nick. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll send you the link again, a new link, so that you can see the second half of the film. And Nicole, I'm sending you another link as well.
Thank you.
So does anybody else have any questions? Just raise your hand. Let me unmute you, Nicole. Okay. Whoops. Nope, that didn't work. There we go.
Yeah, I actually just typed it in the chat, so maybe you want to read it from there, but I'm happy to stay unmuted if I can clarify.
You're unmuted, so go ahead.
Well, what I was writing, Savanna, is to this point that you were just saying, that they've told a different story about the war, but it seemed like not even just about the war, but at several iterations in the film, there's this evidence that at least some people know that this framing of the principles and he's a god is not their only truth, or even if it's their truth, that they know that there are other viewpoints, that might have a perspective. I just feel like that would be such a hard thing to cope with generationally, to just be like under a limiting truth. So I wonder if you've got any sense about how much of the population is in that, well, we kind of know, but we're doing this dance, and if so, how do they cope? The ones who don't get out.
Yeah, because that's why I think that the South Korean dramas have been so important. Like they've been sneaking in South Korean dramas. And it's funny how you would think, and when you talk about dramas, we talk about soap operas. I mean, they love South Korean soap operas. And because it is, because they're taught that North Korea, and you think that North Korea again is this kind of still in the 70s, and they're there there's a lot of poverty, but they're taught that they're doing really well. Their country is the best country in the world, the most prosperous country in the world. And then they see these images of this modern modern South Korea, and it's like, wow. So yeah, so there is this understanding that there is a disconnect with the government is telling them that apart from what they're actually seeing. And that's why, I mean, people have been killed over these South Korean dramas, sneaking these South Korean dramas into the country. And some of the things that like some of the activism groups in South Korea do is they drop the USB drives, they drop like balloons of them over populated areas. And that's the thing, to help them get information from the outside world. Because you have to remember that they don't have access to the World Wide Web. They have an intranet that's available to them, but nothing. So yeah, so there is some of that, but it's one of these things where you don't speak of it, because within each community there are kind of this I forget what it's called, but they're police within themselves, right? So there's a head of, like, there might be 40 families, and then so there's a head of those 40 families, and then so there's this hierarchy of people just kind of watching one another. So other people will turn you in within. So so people are very careful about what they say and what they express, because the other challenge is that if like with the dancer, her whole three generations of your family are taken. And that's the other thing about activism there, or about revolt, or about kind of people talk about why hadn't they overthrown the government. It's because it's one thing to put your own life on the line, it's another thing to put your parents' life on the line and your children's life on the line, that they're going to wipe out, and all your brothers and sisters, they're going to wipe out 3 generations of your family. So that's another thing to think about. Am I willing to have 3 generations of my family wiped out for my behavior? But they do know. So it's going to be interesting. They have these marketplaces now where they are doing a lot of different exchanges. And so a lot of this information is coming in. So it'll be really interesting to see just kind of how this all plays out. There's some feeling that they'll become more like China if they stay under kind of this Kim regime, and this continues on for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Which it easily could, that they'll become more like China, they'll become more market-based, because the government can't provide for people. I mean, after the famine in 92 to 94, they never were able to come back to that level of kind of that kind of communist support system. So that's a feeling that where it will go. I think for a lot of people, very few of the people that I spoke to, of the experts, nobody wants to see a collapse in North Korea, because they don't think anybody will be served by that. To see millions of refugees trying to come into China, millions of refugees trying to come into South Korea. It's like, how do you maintain a stable country and then have change? And
what is the population of North Korea?
It's about half of South Korea. So South Korea is about 50 million. North Korea is about 25, 26 million. Yeah.
So do we have any other questions?
Yeah, thanks for coming tonight. I'm a little spacey because I'm just like, my brain is fried from this semester. So if some questions weren't quite clear, answers weren't quite clear, I apologize.
You can email info@peacefilmfest.org, and I'll pass the questions along to Savanna, and she can email them back to, email you replies back, or work out, to be able to answer them. But before we wrap up, and first of all, thank you everybody for coming.
And thanks for watching the film, I appreciate it.
Before we wrap up, I want to just let everybody know about the next 2 of the GPFF Lives Online events next Thursday and the following Thursday. And the films, there are links to the films on the Global Peace Film Festival website, which is peacefilmfest.org. And next Thursday on May 21st at 6 p.m., Kelly Sheehan is the executive producer at award-winning production company Rain Lake Films, and she's going to discuss her past films that have been at the Global Peace Film Festival and what she's working on now. The two films that were at the festival in the past was Crossing Arizona, about issues of border security in Arizona's Sonoran Desert bordering Mexico, and Mariachi High, which is an uplifting film that follows students competing in a mariachi championship at Zapata High School in South Texas. There are links on our website for you to access those films, either on Amazon Prime or Canopy if you have access to Canopy. And then the following week on May 28th at 7 p.m., John Osaki, the director of Alternative Facts, The Lies of Executive Order 9066, and an attorney who's worked on the case at the center of the film will be joining us to talk about his work, not only Alternative Facts, but also what he's doing. And that film is available online through the distributor, and this month for Asian American Heritage Month, it's available for free. So we hope you'll join us. For those. And thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Savanna, for being our first GLOW participant. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we hope to see you next week and the week after. And we'll have more programming in June.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Savanna. Thanks, Nina.
Bye.
Bye.